The sun is up and it's another beautiful day in Rio, Paulo, and I'm currently just flying around having a look at the sights. Okay, so there's been a couple of mods come out recently that are really going to make it possible to do what we're going to do today here. We are going to build a massive custom super block, a massive multi-purpose building with shops, clubs, restaurants and markets, and we're going to have functional car parking on the roof. Well, at least that's the plan. That all sounds really good, but we'll see how functional it really is at the end. But we're going to build it right here, right on the waterfront in the middle of downtown. This would be an obvious spot that would be upgraded, and this is certainly going to look like a new style development. So to be able to make these car parks functional, I have to have them on real terrain. So the first thing I'm going to do is create a few different levels here. They are going to double as the roofs of the buildings and also the parking surface. And then I'd like to create like little wee slopes between the tiers so that a road can run up here and give access to all these different levels. So the mod that's going to really make this possible is a new one where every building in the game comes as a prop version, which is useful in itself. But personally, I think the most handy part of the mod is the fact that these building props do not disturb the terrain. They are not terrain conforming. And because of that, we can use an appropriate building to put around the edge of all these different tiers. At least that's the thought in my head at this stage, so I'm just trying to sort of make this loosely at this point, because I may have to modify it if I can't find the right size building or whatever. If the slope of the road between the levels is too great, you know, I'll have to change it. So I'm staying somewhat flexible with the design at this point. But I know one thing's for sure, I want to see the vehicles going up and down here. I don't want any part of it to look like it's tunneling into a building and they just pop out on the top. I want to be able to see all the action. So I've got a rough idea of where I want all of the car parks and stuff at this point, so I've got to find an appropriate building. And in this case here, I think I'm using like a medical building, but it's super appropriate. I want it to look like a building, but I don't need a crazy looking facade or anything like that. Just something simple. I want to be able to make it look like the whole structure is all the same architecture. And I have to say, this mod is awesome. Like, the ideas going through my head right now, you know, we could do all sorts with this. The fact that they don't disturb the terrain is massive. It also means that we can place them off the road because they don't need any connection to a road, so we can really make blocks look like they're jam-packed and we don't have to put road access everywhere. So let's get these buildings in here before we move on to the next stage, which is putting the car parks in. wanted to try and tidy up the edge of the terrain a little bit and try and maximize the amount of space we have on these roof areas. I like the idea of some of the cars parking right up to the edge of the building, and I'm thinking if we use pedestrian paths up here and then we turn them to a key wall with the extended road upgrade, this might do the trick. A couple of little final tweaks to the road and a little bit to the terrain, and we can start doing the car parks with the surfaces on the ground. I must have cycled through about 20 or 30 different surfaces, but in the end I found that Sully's new one, it's just a very simple concrete square, that looked really good. The colour was good too. It sort of looks like it's got concrete control joints or cuts everywhere to give it this sort of tiled look. The car parks themselves are going to be really simple. I mean, it's just a few painted lines on the ground with some stains, and in this case I want to put some sort of a shelter over them because it would get blisteringly hot up here. Well, it ain't perfect and it definitely needs some tweaking. Our first Mad Dog driver up here almost went straight off the side of the building, but I have to say it is really cool watching these cars come up and down and look for a park, or in this case fall 6 stories to the road below. So with this traffic coming up here now, I just want to check that everything's doing the right thing. All the cars are going where they should, they're parking okay, and there's no little dodgy connections that I've made with any invisible networks. At this point, it's vital that we find out whether this is working or not, and that means in terms of the pedestrian movement as well. I've put a whole lot of paths in here. I've tried not to make them all invisible because I'd like to see where they are if I can, but I've also got some clipping in and through the buildings. I've used a prop version of the subway entry to make it look like they have access underground. So you can see here we've got a little bit of pedestrian movement. This is okay, it looks to be working fine. They're parking their vehicles and then walking along the paths. So I'm really happy with what we've got here up on these top 2 levels, but what we've got on the ground, I'm not so happy with. I've got the pedestrian only road coming through here at the moment, but it's just far too wide. I haven't really got an alternative yet though, so we're going to leave that in and let's start putting in all the shop fronts here. This is going to be one crazy area in terms of props. This raised part of the shopping complex here is probably the largest open plaza in the whole building. I really didn't want to make it look too open, so I'm going to try and break up the space a little bit with different shapes with the surface tool, and also trying to make it look like there's a couple of fountains up here, or rather small ponds. This might hopefully introduce a little bit of Brazilian culture and flair to the area, because otherwise it looks very contemporary. It's quite a modern building, like I mentioned earlier. The most predominant surface we're going to use on the ground is going to be the same wavy one we see at Copacabana Beach. It's that black and white wavy look. It's a really laid back surfy sort of a vibe, and I thought it'd be perfect for this area. In terms of detail for this particular level, I would like to make it look like there's a whole lot of little wee markets up here, as well as all the shops and stuff that we would see, being a shopping complex. And I'd like to see all the pedestrians moving through all the little wee narrow alleyways and things like that between all of the markets, and just generally have a lot going on up here. And once I started putting all of that detail in, I realised that I didn't need to break the area up with anything other than a lot of markets, so I removed all of that detailing earlier around those ponds and just went with ultra detail. So apart from the markets up here, we've got a couple of really nice looking restaurants, we've got lots of food stalls and things like that around, and I've tried to add some trees for shade without hiding the whole area from view. So that is basically going to be the same theme we're going to follow for this entire shopping complex. Although some places there might be a cinema, and other places there might be like a bar or a restaurant. So this is really going to be a really diverse area. Now we can get rid of that super wide pedestrian road on the bottom and start getting this ready for some detail. Down the bottom here, I'd like to have more of an emphasis on restaurants and eating areas, particularly seated eating areas. I'd like to make them have their own little feel and vibe to them. Some of them might be good to meet the bros at and watch a football game, and others might be better for taking your partner out. But again, I want to have all of the pedestrian movement really tightly moving around these areas. Maybe in some parts you actually have to walk right through the middle of a seated area. There's also going to be a lot of displays out the front of the storefronts here, and there's also a lot of stalls here, like these might be set up for special occasions or on the weekends. So you are not going to be short of things to do in this area. Speaking of things to do, we're going to whip across the road now over to the beach side and add in some more things to do, because you know there isn't enough things to do already, but I need to draw some actual citizens down to this area, and these are hopefully going to do that. The final piece of detailing we're going to add on this bottom area is just lots of grunge and stains on the ground and the rest of the trees. I think our final result looks pretty cool, and the amount of things we could do with this mod that lets us put down prop buildings is pretty crazy. I have to say, I really like watching people drive up and park on the roof, and this is just so jam-packed with detail down here. It really does look like a happening area. We don't have much pedestrian movement through here at the moment, but it's still early days. I mean, there's still a lot of the surrounding area that hasn't been built out, and once we put in more attractions and stuff, this area is going to be full of people, and that's really going to top it off, I think. So the last bit that needs the treatment is the other side here, and we're going to follow exactly the same thing we've done, including a second level car park and lots of shop fronts, but over here is where we're going to put the cinema, and we're going to put a bit of effort into this. And with that, this entire shopping complex is now complete. We're going to add some very cool things to this in the next episode, but for now, we're going to leave it at this. Thank you guys so much for watching today's episode. If you could give me a thumbs up if you've enjoyed it, that would be great. I'd love to hear what you guys thought in the comments, and I hope to see you on the next episode. So look after yourselves, look after each other, and I'll see you there. See you later, guys.